In a world where success hinges on teamwork, unity is the key to victory. But in the hustle and bustle of everyday work life, achieving that unity can seem like an insurmountable challenge. Disorganization, disunity plague many teams, but it's not because they don't have shared goals, it's because they lack buy in on how to achieve those goals. And that's where we come in. Introducing the Buy In Rocks method, your roadmap to achieving buy in, unity, and success within your team. With the Rocks format, you'll proactively plan, provide clarity, and get buy-in from your team, simplifying the work and sustaining your progress toward your goals. Visit leadershipontherocks.com/buy-in to download our free Buy-in Rocks planning template. Don't let disunity hold your team back. Get the buy-in you need to achieve your goals. Visit leadershipontherocks.com/buy-in.
Transformation can be the big blow it up and start over. Transformation could also be just incremental change. So it's the whole idea when I think about transformational leadership, it's this eye toward continuous improvement, right? It is not me telling you what to do and what changes you need to make. It's the approach of how we engage all levels of the organization. So I'm going to be engaging people in the eye toward what the goal is, aligned to what strategy the organization is. But I'm also going to engage people in the problem solving so that people are solving problems where the information exists.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with executive leadership coach Michele Smith about all things transformational leadership, including why mindset and being authentic matters. And we'll even touch base on servant leadership. Michele Smith is a dedicated executive leadership coach with extensive experience coaching individuals across all levels of the organization. She has a broad experience as a designated leader and change management consultant. Michele is also a skilled performance improvement coach and facilitator, in person and virtual, with in-depth knowledge in healthcare finance, and lean tools and methodologies. As an International Coaching Federation professional certified coach, a certified Maxwell Leadership team member, and a Pro-Sci certified change practitioner, Michele blends coaching, consulting, speaking, and facilitation with over 2 decades of business experience and a passion to help individuals become the leaders they want to be. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Michele. I am beyond excited to have you here because I've met you. I've actually been on your podcast, Leadership Soundbites. The episode came out, guys. You got to check it out. It's episode 144. It's called Leadership Soundbites, and the episode's called Leadership is Not a Destination. Michele, I adore you. We've had great conversation, and I'm so excited to continue it here on Leadership on the Rocks. So welcome.
I am too. I think I told you when you were on my podcast when we were done, you're like a freaking ray of sunshine. And I love being in the room with you. And it's so interesting because I remember on ours we would talk about something and it would go on to something else. But I just think there's this, and I love your analogies and your little stories. But I think there's just a wealth of information. And when we ping off each other, I think there's an opportunity for people that may not have connected on one. They're like, okay, I've heard it a second time. This makes sense now.
Oh man, I could not agree more. It was such a natural conversation. And your background, is in healthcare and finance. My background's in education. So we are proof that you can completely come from just different industries and be like, hey, we've had similar experiences and learn from that and share those experiences. So this cross-cultural industry, I guess you could say, works really well if you want to grow in leadership. So I'm so excited.
My mentor was from education. And so Margie Hagney, and so the stuff that she pulls from is from education of like 5-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
And the way that they were taught to educate 5-year-olds is basically the practice that we need to bring in for adults. It's kinesthetic learning. It's the practice, the hands-on practice of what the stuff is. So we take it from here to here and the application of, so we've actually embedded it into how we do stuff. And it's powerful.
It is. I could not agree more. And I just think of how for years, leadership or trainings, professional development, they're getting it wrong. Do not talk at people. The things that work, go back to the 5-year-old. And I love, if you ever watch The Office, Michael Scott, and he's struggling with his budget, and he's talking to Oscar, and Oscar explains what's wrong with the budget. And he goes, okay, explain it to me like I'm 8. And he does, and he still doesn't get it. Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5. I'm like, that is kind of like what we need. We need the interaction. We need the storytelling because then I can understand the concept. Because what we have all the time is a failure to communicate because we don't do that. And therefore, whatever it is that we wanted to happen is not heard, understood, and it's definitely not applied. And that's the
Well,
problem.
and the thing is too is we assume a shared meaning, right? So I'm going to come to you and I'm going to talk about executive presence is one of those things. So let me talk to you. You're an aspiring leader, you're coming up and you get feedback that says you need to develop your executive presence. And the
Mhm.
person goes, "Oh, okay." And they walk away thinking they know what that means. What does that mean? What does that mean for you as a human?
Yeah.
So, and it's not about mimicking somebody else. Like, I'm not going to be a Barack Obama. I'm not going to be an Elon Musk. I'm not going to be a Steve Jobs. I'm going to be Michelle Smith, but the best version of Michelle Smith I can be. And so, when you talk about people about what executive presence is, it's confidence, it's authenticity,
Mhm.
it's being vulnerable, it's being real, transparent, all that stuff
Wait,
of
so
who
it's
you
not
are.
wearing a good suit and having a nice watch and driving a nice
No,
car? Oh,
no,
okay.
no. Well, and it could be leadership on the rocks, your little image, right? But it's interesting when people then you can start to relax, right? Because if we go in thinking it's to your point, all these layers, right, we put up there, and it's like, okay, now I've got to be someone who I'm not. How likely are you to connect with someone else if you put up all this stuff
Hmm.
about who you're not? Your mask is on, your suit's on, your everything's on, and then you wonder why people aren't responding to you.
Yeah. And how exhausting is that to wear a mask and try to remember who you're supposed to portray versus just portraying who God made you to be, right? And all of the
Yes,
gifts and talents that He gave you. And again, we don't
yes,
all have the same gifts and talents. We can all be great leaders and specialize and be gifted in certain areas. And it's okay. That's why you build a diverse team around you. You don't have to know and
yes,
do it all.
yes. I love that perspective. The other thing that came to mind for me was it was based on what one client said to me one time. She was talking about executive presence. And she said, and I've got to get that under control. And I said, what are you talking about? To be a leader. And she goes, I laugh too much. Oh my goodness. When is laughing too much or laughter not the equivalent of being in executive presence? And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, 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 no. It's like there's a group that I recently formed. We formed an organization. It's around AI stuff, right? So it's a newer. And so we were forming our values. And one of our values is have fun.
Nice.
So, we need to be able to bring in the fun and who we really are and what's going on because humans need to laugh.
Hmm.
We need to get along. We need to find joy in what we're doing. And so it's like if you've got this thing in your head, the executive presence doesn't include laughter.
Yeah,
Whoa,
I know.
talk
And
about a heavy weight.
it reminds me of something John Maxwell said, and I'm not going to get this perfect, but he says something about be able to laugh at yourself because everybody else is.
Yeah.
It's something
There
like
was
that.
Yes, it's along those lines. It was a birthday card that I found somebody else too. Thanks for all the laughter, that you because
Mhm.
hopefully you can laugh at yourself. We've been laughing at you for years, yeah.
That's awesome. That's
But
so
it's
awesome.
it's along those same lines. So it's like, what does it look like to be able to show up as your authentic self? Granted, it's not everything of who you are, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I tell people. It's like when I come to the office, I don't bring everything of me,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring the core stuff of who I am, and it's gonna be I'm gonna have enough EQ to be able to manage the room and know, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna go there. But I found that the older I get, the more those are aligned of who I show up, how I show up at work, right? With the
Mhm.
exception of makeup and clothes and all that stuff, and how I show up with family or on the weekend. It's not this great divide of personalities. And I think part of it could be as I've gotten older, I've become more comfortable with who I am and
Mhm.
not quite so self-conscious, probably with a narrative. I never really
Yes.
thought about it before, but yeah, it's not as different as what it used to be.
I agree. The older I get, the more confident I am, but almost like my vocabulary has decreased a little bit for all the people in their mid 40s. And you're like, what happened to my brain and my eyesight? Yeah. But the confidence level has never been more there. And again, I'm probably in the worst body I've ever been in. I used to be involved in sports and I just don't have time for that stuff anymore. But it is, I'm more confident in who I am and what I'm not even. And so
Yeah.
I'm way more consistent in my personality and all those things, no matter where I'm at. Because guys, we want to lead at work, but we also want to lead at home. So you shouldn't wear one hat at work and then come home and be a
Mm-mm.
completely different person either. And so that's really important. I want to dive in though. You are like an
Yes,
expert
please
on
dive.
transformation. And so even the name of your company I love, Better Possibilities. It just even that name, thinking about, wow, there is something better out there. There are so many
Mhm.
possibilities. There's not one right answer, guys. This is a creative world. There's a lot of possibilities, but you really dive into a lot of transformational leadership. So I do want to dive into this topic with you, but I do want to start with the definition. Let's start like we're 5 year olds. What is transformational leadership? And then just tell me all the things that you know about it.
Um, so it's interesting because transformation can be the big blow it up and start over. Transformation could also be just incremental change.
Mm,
So it's the whole idea when I think about transformational leadership, it's this eye toward continuous improvement, right? It is not me telling you what to do and what changes you need to make. It's the approach of how we engage all levels of the organization so that literally, and I'm going to go back to lean management system, and lean is a management system, right? And transformational leadership is key to that. So I'm going to be engaging people in the eye toward what the goal is, aligned to what strategy the organization is. But I'm also going to engage people in the problem solving so that people are solving problems where the information exists. And I'll give you an example, okay? Is a lot of times what you have is frontline people, frontline staff that are doing a role. So frontline is going to be people that don't have people reporting to them.
mm,
They're the doers of the stuff.
yeah.
They're the best ones to know what stuff needs to be done, what's getting in the way and everything else. But well-intentioned leaders tend to, and maybe at one time they did that stuff. And then they got promoted, right? And then they're like 3 or 4 layers away. And now all of a sudden, we're going to tell you how you need to do your stuff. So they cascade down improvements to the stuff on the front lines. No one engages the frontline person in how's your stuff going? Are
Mhm.
you still doing what I used to do when I was doing the stuff?
Yeah.
Or have things changed? Because what happens is people typically, my experience has been that people will be doing stuff on the front line. It doesn't necessarily work. Anyone who's felt this, raise your hand, right? And instead of going back up saying, hey, this doesn't work, you just create the workaround so that it does work.
Hmm.
Because frontline, for the most part, is really great at getting stuff done. So transformational leadership is about engaging those levels where the information is, i.e., where the work is happening. And by the way, there's different work at different levels of the organization. But I'm going to engage those leaders in the thinking and the problem solving around how to change, transform, right? What's being done, the experience people have, the experience we have as individuals, all that stuff. So transformation isn't a blinder on, we're going to do this big bang thing. For me, it includes that stuff that we're radically going to shove stuff onto the side and pull in something else. But it also includes the incremental improvement and how we're doing that improvement. So that leadership is saying, here's what we're going to do, here's where we need to go. But
Hmm.
I'm not going to prescribe for you how we're going to get there.
Man. Yeah, in thinking of all of that, the vision is set by the leader or the people, the organization, whatever. This is where we need to go. But the humility in saying, but I don't
Mm.
necessarily know the best way to get there. You do. So, how? Let's talk it through. But it doesn't also need to be just a rolling down the hill of, hey guys, go figure out and solve this problem. And I provide you no guidance. It's got to be engagement of that conversation. And so, one, there's humility of allowing someone else to step in with the solutions. But two, don't just delegate it and walk away. It's that engagement of the process of that conversation of, so what are some of the biggest obstacles? Because maybe some of them I'm the only one that's able to help you with it. For example,
Hmm.
guess where the bottleneck is on a Coke bottle? It's at the top.
Yep.
Bottlenecks are usually at the top, right? So you got to get
I
the
like
leader out
that.
there. And so you do need those individual contributors saying, okay, there's a bottleneck here, and guess what? You're it.
It's funny, you go back and I'll go back to a visual. I used to teach a 2-day A3 thinking class that Margie Hagney developed with John Shook, and it's around process improvement. So obviously there's a theme of process improvement and continuous improvement. But I love the visual from Toyota and what it had, and maybe some of you have seen it. It's the mountaintop. It's a thing of a mountain, and you've got a leader at the top or someone at the top, toward the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's facing two of the other climbers that are facing him that are climbing up. And there's a rope connecting everyone, right? And so the leader or the person toward the top is facing down, looking at the other two people. There's sweat, beads of sweat on the two people that are climbing up. And it's meant to depict a leader's role within that organization, Toyota, continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're sharing this visual in a group of leaders, I'll give people a history of what it is, and I'll ask them, what's one thing that you see? I'm not asking for the right thing. What are you looking
Mm-hmm.
for? But I want to hear the thinking after they understand what the visual is. So a lot of people will say, well, the leader's facing the people. Okay, great. So say more about that. Because the thing is, if you're going to do what you're talking about, right, is the leader's job is to develop their people, develop themselves, to develop their people to get business results. So you're absolutely right. We're not going to go forth. And I'm just going to go, oh, that's done, right? I'm going to look at you and find
Mm-hmm.
out where you're at, because part of the main things about leadership is to meet people where they're at. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a variety of different people, like you called out. We're all different. We all have different opportunities. We all want to go to similar places, i.e., with an organization, whatever that may be. But it's like, I need to be looking at my people to understand where they're at, where they're struggling, where they're doing great. Maybe someone else is ready to come to the front of the line, right? And rotate through the rope that is has a certain tautness right on it. We had one person in the room that was a rock climber, and they said the tautness of the rope matters. This is the connection between the leader at the top of the hill and the two other people. Because if it's too tight, you can pull them over, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's too loose, they fall back. So when you're developing people and developing myself, there's going to be tension, right? Because
Yes.
that's where the growth happens, right? Like John Meckles said, outside of our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's where growth happens. So we've got to have some kind of pressure to grow us. But this is the whole transformational leadership piece is I've got to your point, my ego has got to be set aside. I'm going to show up with humility. I'm not the answer person unless it's my question to answer. I'm going to take my cape off because a lot of times leaders walk in and it feels good to be a hero.
Oh, yeah.
It feels good to have the answer, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to set my cape off and put it aside. And I'm going to show up, seeing where people are at, figuring out what they need next from me. And then I can step in. I can
Mm-hmm.
either advocate for them, cheerlead, to your point, remove barriers that
Yeah.
sign authorization for something, which is a barrier.
Yeah.
No one else has the signing authority, whatever that may be. But we need to be able to see where people are at. And that
Mm-hmm.
happens by going to where the work is happening. In Lean, they call it Gemba. Gemba is a Japanese term for where the work happens.
Wow. I love that.
And so, yeah, so you're learning all these words. And Gemba
Right.
is a real Japanese term that people use. I have friends from Japan that in a sentence he was talking, he goes, Gemba. And I'm like, oh, time out, stop. It's real.
That's awesome.
Uh,
The one Japanese word that I know is ikigai, and that's your purpose, right? Everybody, and
yes.
that's why they live so long in Japan. They always have ikigai, a purpose to live.
Yeah, it's your my brain goes back to Doitashimashite. That was the one. Doitashimashite is you're welcome. And we learned it as a kid because I lived in Japan for 4 years when I was a kid. My dad was in the Air Force. So I learned it there and it was don't touch the mustache, Doitashimashite.
I love it. The first time you said it, honestly, that's what I thought I heard. Don't touch the
Yeah, no,
mustache.
it's good because in my head it's don't touch the mustache. Okay,
Yeah.
don't touch your mustache. But anyway, I think it comes back to that is that you don't leave people stranded. You see where they're
Mhm.
at. You challenge them to grow and step into stuff. But you also give them the opportunity. And I think the other part of it for me, and you may have heard it, is when you propose this to leaders, right? Is that you tell them the what, they can figure out the how, you engage their brains. You're not the answer person, unless it's your question. And I get this look, and I said, and now what I say to leaders that I'm coaching to lead differently is what I hear from some leaders is, so if they're the ones doing and they're the ones having the answers, what's my job?
Hmm.
Because if we've been promoted for having the answers and we've been promoted for the solution, if we've been promoted for all that stuff, and now you're going to tell me that's not what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So it's a shift. And so when you talk about humility, that's part of it, is that your role now is to develop people. Your role is for people to understand
Mhm.
strategy. And it's different, and you've got a seat at a different table than they have. So what does it look like to share that information with them?
Yeah. And you're just so hitting the nail on the head. And there's two things that are popping in my mind, and I want to
Yeah,
talk into both. So I don't know which way you want to go with it. But one is the
wherever you want.
mindset. You talked about tension. Oh, so many people hate tension. They want to avoid tension. And so you have to have a certain mindset to be able to step into that with confidence of, no, we need tension. And then how do get over the fact of, well, I have to change my perception of, what role I play in this thing. So there's another mindset piece. But then the other thing is moving forward. You know what? This is where my 40 brain comes into play. I completely forgot my second thought. I will
It will
get to
come
it
back
later.
to you.
It will come
It
back.
will come back to you. I promise you,
Yes.
because
So
I've
I
had that
guess we'll just
happen.
start with mindset. How about that?
So what are your thoughts on mindset? Because you said a couple things, but I'm curious what's on your mind about it.
Uh, well, I think it's completely mindset is what drives your experience. In
Hmm.
my reading of Carol Dweck and all of those things, it will absolutely drive your experience. So you have to be you can change your mindset. You can be intentional in how you develop and grow your mindset. So this is not you are the way that you are,
Hmm.
I am what I am. No, you can actually
Eat
adjust
your
and change
canned
your mindset.
spinach. Everything's going to be good.
Yeah, you can change it. It's malleable. And so understanding, and I think there's just so much that plays into it is one, I can do hard things. I can learn new things. It's like these, I hate to say affirmation statements, but it's reminding yourself of all of these things that are true because your
Hmm.
emotions are going to lie to you. Your emotions are going to take you down all these other paths that you don't want to go. And so mindset is capturing those thoughts to remind you of what is true so that you can make a better decision in the way that you act and the way that you feel. And
Yeah.
so
Have you been exposed at all to positive intelligence? Coach Shirzad,
I
he
have
wrote.
positive psychology, yes, but positive intelligence
Yeah,
specifically,
it's
no.
same kind of animal, right?
Okay.
Positive psychology around Sean Aker, which I love his stuff, Happiness Advantage. He's got a TEDx that he did. It's like 12-minute. I send the link to tons of people who we need to start filtering through a different lens instead of
Mhm.
the glass is half empty, the glass is half full, right? Instead of, and it's reprogramming our brains to start looking for different things. Positive intelligence coach Shirzad wrote about, he's got a boot camp, saboteurs that we have in our brain. And so
Mm.
when you were talking about our emotions, they're triggered by the narrative that we've got going in our brain. So that's where we've got to control it, right? And so there's 9, 10. We all have the judge saboteur, right? Judge of self, judge of others, judge of situation, judge, judge, judge. But a lot of it is when I'm coaching people is we don't own the saboteur. So there's a stickler saboteur, perfection, if you will.
Mm.
There's a controller, hypervigilant, pleaser, avoider. We've got all these saboteurs in our head. And depending on and I usually work with people in the top three. You don't need to go after all of them. Just work on the top three and you're going to notice start to get control of it. But you have this negative narrative going on in your head. And it could be something happens, like you make a mistake. So instead of going, okay, that didn't work out as planned, okay,
Mhm.
which by the way is a very great response because all of a sudden I'm still moving forward, I'm good, I'm not beating myself up. Versus, there you go again, you're such a loser
Yeah.
in your head because this is the narrative inside. Can you ever get this right? Right? So that kind of narrative that's going on in your head, you're not going to move forward. You're going to go, there I go again. I apparently I can't do anything right.
Mhm.
Versus, whoop, that didn't work out as I planned. So what am I thinking about what I'm going to tweak or change or whatever so that I have a different outcome? But these saboteurs we have in our head, we need to take control of them because we're in survivor brain when they're showing up.
Yeah.
So in survivor brain, it's like the hungry tiger's chasing us, right? And your fight or flight, and it shuts down all the creative learning centers of your brain. So now you're getting
Mhm.
into positive psychology, right? So what we
Yes.
need to do is we need to go back and go, okay, breathe, okay? To your point earlier before we hit record, all this stuff happened. I had my stuff happen. Instead of going, oh my gosh, negative, you're like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do XYZ later. That's an intentional flip,
Hmm. Just to
right?
jump
And
in and
all,
let people know, guys, this
yeah,
morning I was going to exercise and I couldn't find my tennis shoes. My daughter had borrowed them, walked outside and stepped in dog poop, and it just ruined my entire morning. And I had to stop and say, okay, I'm not going to get to work out this morning, but I am thankful that I can work out this evening. So that's what she's talking about. I had to
yes,
literally stop and not
thank
be
you,
not
thank
be
you, thank
upset,
you.
but change my thinking.
But it's that kind of stuff, right? Because you could have gone down a different path,
Yeah.
which would have totally impacted who showed up in the podcast to where you would have had to get a grip. But the
Yeah.
reality of it is we can stop in that moment, not even go down the angry path at all. We can look at it and go, okay, then, not what I planned, but yeah, let's go with it.
Yeah.
Because it's like the saying, it's not the hill to die on, right?
Mm,
So for
yes.
me, I'm going to compare it to that stuff. Is this what I would have picked? Was this my first choice? No, but it's not the hill to die on. So let it go. I'm
You
like
know,
frozen.
Uh, yes, let it go. That's so good. Things you can learn from, again, movies written for 5-year-olds. Let's go back to that concept, right? It really is simple. It is so
Yes.
simple. And I love, hearing you say that. And I know we mentioned this on your podcast as well, but it's learning to not listen to yourself, those gut reactions and gut emotions, but learning to talk to yourself.
Hmm.
And it's a completely different thing. But again, your mindset is malleable. You can adjust it. You can learn how to do that, how to not listen to yourself, but how to talk to yourself. I remembered the second thing
Oh,
finally.
I
Thank you,
knew it.
Jesus. It came back. And out of everything you're talking about, transformational leadership, mindset was so important. And you've just shared so much wisdom about that, about how that we have to control those saboteurs. But now, so much of what you were talking about is really servant leadership. I am not
Mhm.
the sage on the stage and the power and the authority. Yes, you still have those things because of the title, but the way that you're working transformation is very much a servant leadership
Mhm.
approach. And so that was the second thing that I wanted to dive into. So tell me all the things about servant leadership.
Well, I'm gonna tell you that it is a phrase that people have reaction to.
Mm,
And I've had leaders tell themselves a story that because of the word servant.
hmm.
And I think part of it is we need to understand what it means to be in service to other people, right? In
Yeah.
service to their development. It doesn't mean that you're, drink on a platter and you're, did you want another cocktail or, here's a what. That's not what that means.
Or you
But it
take the
means,
customer relations abuse of an unhappy
yes,
customer. Yeah.
yes. And I think it's important to unpack that for people because that phrase has been used and it's got negative connotations is probably the best way to say it for some
Hmm.
people. The reality that though of it is when we, not if we, but when we are in service to developing the people on our teams to where the people that reported to me, I wanted to be able to learn from them and I wanted them to frickin' surpass me as far as leadership or anything else went. That was like, go, be
Yeah.
who you're supposed to be, the shining star, all that. Because there's pride and joy in that. But here's what happens when you actually show up in genuine service to other people and developing them and highlighting them, right? One of the words that I'll say is I'll hear leaders say, well, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this.
Hmm.
I said, okay, are you open to some feedback? Yes. I said, because you were not an island by yourself doing those things. So who actually did that stuff?
Yeah.
So if you shift from I to we, just that simple little shift, you're going to notice a change in how people around you are responding to the information that you're sharing
Hmm.
because you're no longer just putting the spotlight on yourself. Okay. You're shifting it to the people that are on your team because you couldn't have done it alone. Right.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden it's like, well, we did this and we did that. And the people that are in the earshot of what you're saying know they're part of the we.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got a different level of engagement.
Hmm.
That's what servant leadership is to me, is when you take the spotlight off yourself, you highlight the team, and here's what happens. The team will turn around and go, "We couldn't have done it without you."
Yeah, it's true. Oh, that's so good. And all the whole time you're talking, I'm just thinking Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is
Yes.
known for their service, servant leadership service. You're serving.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
much of what they do, they have very efficient systems, right? They just cut all the crap. I don't know how to say it. Like they are so efficient at what they do. It is their pleasure to do it. So they have great
Hmm.
attitudes and they anticipate your needs. And I think that's a huge thing with service. If you are serving your team, just take a hot minute to say, here's the problem that they're working on. What are some of their needs? How can I anticipate what they need to be successful and be ready to provide that
Hmm.
before they even ask it or ask the question in order to make sure that I have clarity on what they need so that you are
Bingo.
serving them well.
Yes.
So just
Bingo.
think of the Chick-fil-A line and how they should be running our government and our healthcare and all the other things because it would be efficient, it would be their pleasure with good attitudes, and they would anticipate
Well,
everything
and,
you
and
needed.
you know it's their pleasure because they say it.
Yes.
They say it. So it's so funny. I was when I worked at Sutter Health healthcare system, predominantly Northern California. We had, I think Quint Studer came in, and it was around keywords, right, that we were taught around healthcare. Now, mind you, my team at the time was finance, so we did not do direct patient care. So for us, the challenging part was to figure out keywords that we could explain to our customers that we were serving. And so, for instance, like if you're patient care and you're in a patient care room and you close the curtain, okay, and this is how important keywords are. You close the curtain, you could have a patient who's disoriented, they're not at their best, they're thinking, what's going on? They don't want
Mm,
to look at me. Da-da, they're keeping me separated, whatever, all the narrative in our brains, right? Because all that
yeah.
stuff's going on. Versus you're closing the curtain, you're saying, I'm closing the curtain for your privacy.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the patient relaxes and you're okay. So that's frontline. So what do you do in finance, right? So we have
I'm
people calling
contacting
us,
insurance. No, I'm just joking.
operational leaders. We did
Yep.
the income statement, so balance sheet, P&Ls, all the
Mm,
journal entries, all that stuff. All the stats and everything, KPIs, if you will. And so we would have customers, and so my team got together and we're like, okay, how do we respond with keywords? And so part of it is we get these ad hoc requests for reports, analytics, whatever it may be. And so before we hung up, it was one of those things of it was our pleasure. It's something around the lines of, it's going to take us 3 days, or can we ask some questions so we can better serve you, whatever that may be.
hmm.
But we had to really think carefully about what our keywords to be able to communicate with the person calling that it's not an imposition. We're going to ask these questions not because we want to hound you, but because we want to deliver the best product to you of what you
Hmm.
need to be able to solve your, whatever the gap is. But being intentional around the difference between saying thank you, you're welcome, versus thank you, it was my pleasure.
Yeah.
The feeling is completely different. And then you walk away with this thing going, oh, that was nice. They
Yeah.
really take pleasure out of that.
It changes everything. And I
Mhm.
think it's twofold. One, the way that anyone leaves an interaction with you is positive. It's very intentional that way. But number two, it reminds the person that's, engaging with the stakeholder or the customer, it's reminding them of the culture. And it made me think about Seth Godin, who is like this marketing guru, and he has really awesome glasses. I love his glasses. But he says it's all about the norms. People like us do things like this, establishing clarity of how we engage, of how we communicate, of how we do these things. And is that not great service? And again, let's think of the Chick-fil-A model
Yeah.
of they're very standard. And I heard, and I don't know which number is true. I've heard 5 years or 6 years, but it took 5 or 6 years for them to get "It's my pleasure" all the way through their company just to make
Mhm.
that one small change. But it's an important change. And so, everything you're talking about, those key words, guys, think about your industry and your business and your people and how you're engaging and try to, okay, what are some keywords that we need to say or use in how
Mhm.
we serve? Because it'll provide clarity for the norms of us and our
Mhm.
values, but also it'll actually make a better difference in how we serve our customers or stakeholders.
It's so funny you say that. Yeah, it was a long period of time. I can't remember where I was. It may have been. did John Maxwell have him on an interview thing? It may have been somewhere around there. It was the one of the founders or the founder's son from Chick-fil-A that was interviewed on some, I don't know, it was Tony Robbins or it was John
Yeah.
Maxwell, any number of those. But he was talking about that and the intentionality. There's also change management around that
Mm-hmm.
because what you're talking about is changing behavior. So did it really take 5 to 6 years for people to get the memo that this is what we do? No, no, that happened in an instant.
Yeah.
Okay. But what you're talking about is changing behavior. And so when we do that, people have to understand. Number one, and I'm going to go through ADKAR. Have you heard ADKAR?
I have
Pro-size
not.
change management. Okay, so super quick, super easy because I've literally done this on a napkin with people. Okay.
Nice.
ADKAR is an acronym that represents the building blocks of change. So the journey of change that we all go through, big or small.
Mm-hmm.
The first A is awareness. So I have an awareness of why the change is needed, the results of not doing the change, that kind of thing. D is desire. Okay. And this is what most every organization skips over. Change happens at an individual level. So desire means that I make the personal decision to step in and support the change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, not my first choice, but I'm all in. Yeah, sure, let's do this. Okay. Then knowledge. I understand what's expected of me. What's changing? What does it take to succeed in this post-change world? What do I need to do? So I need to say my pleasure after okay, great. So I now have knowledge. But the ability part means I'm going to have to practice. I'm going to have to get
Mm.
better. And depending on where I start, so let's say I was raised in an environment that everyone pissed me off. Okay. I went to go
That's
work for
easy
Chick.
for me to imagine. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, there you go. So I go to work for Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A does this new thing that all of a sudden after every client interaction, customer interaction, I'm going to say it's my pleasure. I don't feel that at anything in my body. I don't feel that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know why we need to say that. I wasn't raised that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can imagine the ability piece. I've got knowledge of what's expected. But for me to make that transformation versus you making the transformation is saying it's my pleasure, the learning gap's probably a little different, right?
Yes.
So then we have ability. The final one is our reinforcement. Stuff is in place that we don't go back to the old way. Is this incentives, motivation? Is this like one of those big, like we're raising money and the big thing is everyone in Chick-fil-A is saying it's my pleasure and here's where we are and we're sharing it with people and we're celebrating? And are we saying, you know what, if this doesn't happen by this time frame, we're going to have to write you up because
Mm.
this is literally part of our standard work and our standard
Yeah.
policy. But there's different things in place, right? You can incentivize people. But that journey is what you have to go through. And that journey is the thing that extends how long it takes. Because if I'm not focused on managing through all those aspects of change, guess what? We start over.
Yeah.
We think we're good. We look away and yeah, no, people go back to the old way.
They do.
So once it is in our DNA and how we do it and how we, onboard people and everything else, and we're paying attention to that stuff, then you start to see the momentum that leads to traction.
Mm. That's so good. And that makes me think of Jim Collins' Good to Great. It's the push on the flywheel. We so bad
Mhm.
want an easy button and a magic pill in everything that we do, whether it's weight loss or, change management and transformation in our businesses.
Yes.
But it is that first push in the flywheel is so hard and you barely get a rotation, if even. Then you got to push again and push it again. And
Mhm.
it's that consistency, that sustainability that it takes all of that energy. And then your momentum starts to build and then you
Mhm.
have it going and it's turning. And so often we don't put in that work. And here's what organizations do. They put such a short deadline on transformation. And I
Mhm.
just the bare bones of it, they'll say, oh, within 6 months, 1 year, and then they scrap it and go choose another magic pill or easy button that they hope works because they did not truly invest and give time for
Mhm.
those things to happen. And I think you're just hitting the nail on the head for all of us in our frustrations because I mean think of teaching, think of healthcare, think of any industry you want to. Has this phrase ever been muttered? Here we go again. Here's the next
Yeah.
pendulum swing of change of whatever it is we're doing.
Flavor
We're
of the
becoming
month.
cynical about it
Yeah.
because
Well,
nobody.
because we've created experiences for people. Have you heard of the
Mhm.
results pyramid? I got
No.
exposed to it from Partners in Leadership. I don't think they're around anymore, but literally a pyramid, right?
Hmm.
And so there's 4 levels to the pyramid, and I'm going to start at the top. So the very top level, the peak, is the results that we currently get, our current outcomes. We get those current outcomes next level down because of the actions that we take. We take those actions next level down because of beliefs that we hold. And we hold those beliefs because of experiences that we've had. So what happens a lot of times is leaders, organizations tell people we want different outcomes, do different things.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna make sure customers are happy, and after every encounter, we're gonna say it was my pleasure. Do different things. And then we go, okay, that's done. Whew, next.
Check the box.
But what happens is people are gonna do it while you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you turn your back to go to the next thing, which a lot of times for organizations, they don't give any integration time. They just boom, the next thing's calendar because this thing's done, right?
Yeah.
This campaign's done. We got the next one coming up. But when you turn away, then people go back to the old way, unless someone's belief is aligned with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of humans, we have to dig down lower. And so I call this root cause analysis for people. But we need to actually understand the beliefs that people are holding. For instance, here we go again, it's flavor of the month.
Yeah.
So we have to change experiences to change beliefs. So people start paying attention. It requires us to do things differently.
Everything that you're sharing is just the heart of how we make things better. And
Mhm.
and it just gives me such hope that people have got to recognize again, we have to change our beliefs that it's not an easy button. It's not a
Mm-mm.
magic pill. It takes time and it takes consistency and it takes the belief that we can change, people's experiences, people's actions, behaviors, and all those things for better results if we give the time. And I think
Mhm.
everything you've just explained, I know you've shared so many new insights for me of, yes, that is a great way. Yes, I got to implement that. Yes. And there's so much to chew on. Like, this is an episode I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to a couple of times just for the wisdom that you're sharing. And so, as
Yeah.
we wrap up, you've shared so much, but what are some key takeaways for our listeners that you're like, okay, I know we've talked about a lot of things, but here's the deal. Talk to us like we're a 5-year-old. Let's go back to that.
Mhm.
What are some key takeaways?
So I don't know that I'd say this part to a 5-year-old. Maybe I would. Rome was not built in a day, right? I think part of it is pick a thing, not all things. Pick a thing that might resonate with you, right?
Mm.
And start there. I think that's the biggest thing because a lot of times, and I refer to it as spinning plates. We're just spinning a lot of plates. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely one that I've got a lot of plates spinning. And what happens then is we spend all our effort just on keeping us spinning and we don't move forward on stuff. So pick a thing that you're going to work on, whether you're a leader that you don't, maybe the whole idea of servant leadership or leading in a different way to where you engage with your team is totally foreign to you and that you want to experiment with it. Maybe you're aspiring to be a leader and you want to figure out what that looks like to potentially lead differently than the experience that you've had.
Yeah.
Pick a thing and then start practicing with that thing to get better at it. Maybe you have awareness around change
Mm.
that hasn't worked so great. Do some exploration around change management. Call me, I'll help you.
There
We'll
you
thought
go.
partner together, right? But I think that's it. Pick a thing. Pick a thing that
Mhm.
you want to start with and not the I have to do all 10 of these.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you're doing improvement work, improvement on self, improvement on the organization, people go, well, I have to do all of it. And it's like, okay, but you're not going to do all of it well.
Mhm.
Pick a thing. Where are you starting? So that would be what I would say.
That's so good. And if you think about it, I heard somebody tell it to me this way is, let's say you want to have a breakthrough. Well, if you're punching, you can think of it as a brick wall or a battering ram with a door, whatever. You're trying to break through.
Yeah.
If you hit in a bunch of different areas, you're not going to build up the momentum. You're not going to weaken that spot to actually have
Mm-hmm.
breakthrough. So imagine a brick wall, punch the same brick every
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, if you just go, go, go with the same brick, you will eventually have that breakthrough and that momentum that you need. And then there's a whole bunch of growth on the other side of that. And that's how they break
I
down
told
doors.
you.
Yeah.
Analogies. You got the best ones.
I think in pictures, I am the 5-year-old.
Love that. I'm
Oh,
always
man.
taking notes on the brick wall because as soon as you said that, it's like, yeah, you're right. If you've got a lot of plates spinning, you're hitting all around and you're not,
Mhm.
maybe 100 years from now, you're going to have a breakthrough, but
Yeah,
you're gonna break through yourself before you
that's
break
right.
through to whatever it is you're trying to get through. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to end up on the bottom pile of a bunch of broken plates, is where I'll be.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, man. Well, in thinking about kind of the opposite, what is one poor decision you would warn our leaders to avoid? Like, don't do this. You're better than that.
I, I don't know. It's not a, it's interesting. So it's hard for me to go there because like you said, oh, I'm grateful that I can work out tonight and not, that's where my brain's wired, right? And I ask a similar question about leadership lessons on, what advice would you give your younger self? Or for me, I don't have anything that it's like, don't do that. But the thing that comes to mind for me is don't wait so long.
Oh.
So if you have this inkling or desire for something more, something different, something fill in the blank, right?
Mm,
And you're sitting back going, I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified for that. I'm not, whatever those I'm not that's holding you back. Throw your freaking hat in the ring.
yes.
Because no matter what, if you don't get that thing, um, you're gonna let people know that you want more. You're
Mhm.
going to be exposed to a different group of people than what you've been exposed to. Let's say you go through and you get panel interviews or whatever, and you don't get the thing, whatever. Yeah, but you people, all those people who are on the panel now know you, and odds are they didn't know you before,
Mhm.
right? So for me, it's don't wait, don't second guess that stuff. Just go for it.
Oh, that is so good. I love it. And I just think of all the things, as I stepped out as an entrepreneur starting my own business, I didn't start till I was 41. And, and there is a lot of fear stepping out there. What about this? What about this? What about this? And
Hmm.
you just have to go, 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 go,
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Go on the one thing, but go. Don't let
yeah.
fear hold you hostage. I love it. Don't wait, guys. Don't wait. So where can our listeners go to learn more about you, Michelle, and all the things that you're doing? Because it's so wonderful. And where can we get the podcast as well?
Thank you. The podcast is on my YouTube channel. I don't know. Can you supply a link for that? It's Better
I will.
Possibilities YouTube channel. Okay. Leadership sound bites. We just, yeah, 144 episodes, 145, keep going. So we drop once a week. If you're interested, you're an up and coming leader, interested in being a guest on the podcast, I'm going to shamelessly say that too. I love people's different perspectives and what lessons they've learned along their leadership journey, and it's a fun conversation as this one is. Better Possibilities, so at www.betterpossibilities.com, reach out to me. And I'm also Michele at betterpossibilities.com email. So reach out because if you're interested in anything that I've talked about or wanting to learn more, I'm here to help.
Yeah,
So
you are
I
a
do
wealth
executive
of
coaching, leadership
knowledge.
development, all that. Well, it's just, I'm not a 20 something anymore. And so what I realized when your kids are 39 and 43, you walked a minute on the planet and I'm literally in service to people. And like I tell them, I'm going to be learning and growing until I'm 6 feet under or an urn on someone's mantle.
There you go. I love it. You're never done,
So
never
yeah,
not working.
no, no. So thank you, thank you. I mean, this has been super awesome. Like I said, you're a ray of sunshine,
Oh, I
and
appreciate it. And I just love learning
pleasure
at
to
the
be in
feet
your
of
life.
you. It's amazing.
Thank
Man.
you, thank
All
you,
right, guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential
thank
rocks.
you.
God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 through 28. But Jesus called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Hey, it's Bethany again. If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership, and through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. If you feel this podcast is helpful, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers, or anyone who wants to grow in leadership, but also have harmony between their work and home life. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next episode.